Hello, can you hear me?
I can.
All right, we did it. Finally.
Awesome.
How
How
you
are
doing?
you?
I'm doing great, man. I've been working on some painting, some between semesters at school right now, and
Nice.
just having a fun time. How are you?
Well, I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah.
I tell you a quick little thing that happened this evening since you're sort of interested in civil works and the workings of local governments or the
Uh-huh.
misworkings of them as it sometimes is.
Uh-huh.
Um, my friend told me he came and dropped some food off at my house and he's like, "Hey man, I just saw there's like a sinkhole down the street from your house. Do you have like a cone or something?" We didn't have anything to mark it with, but we went down to look at it. Um, and we first were like, well, we got to like, call somebody because it was kind of deep and wide and definitely going to be wider. And it's like, well, if we don't get this thing, like if somebody doesn't mark it, somebody's going to drive in it with a car or a bicycle, or somebody's going to fall in it running and get like really hurt. So we called the police non-emergency number,
Yeah.
and the guy there not only was like not helpful, but I think he told us to call the streets department, and then he hung up on us. So we called the streets department, and then they said we explained it to them, and we're like, look, so like it needs to be marked in some way. You need to send somebody down here because like it's dangerous. Uh, so she's like, all right, well, I'll call the fire. We'll send the fire department, and like 10 or 15 minutes later, the police show up.
Oh my goodness.
So
Why?
like, come on. I mean, well, it's just like you could have just sent the police when we called the fucking police.
Right.
But whatever, you know,
And
that's Wilmington,
oh man, you should see
maybe
the
everywhere.
roads here in Greenville, man. They're everything's patched together and the grading is all off. I know this is like a super like wonky civil engineering nerd thing, but like it really irritates me how like every time you like cross a intersection, it's like almost it's got to be a bump. You know what I mean? Like
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Uh,
Well, I uh, I haven't lived in Greenville in 22 years, but it sucked. The roads sucked when I was there, so I can't imagine they're much better because they've been paving them like more and more shitty. I endured a really long repaving of shit, what's it called, Fire Tower, like in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, probably 99 2000.
yeah.
uh and that thing went to shit immediately. So it's, I mean, I don't know how many times they've paved it since then, but
Yeah, they're clearly using I don't know, the material's too soft or something and it keeps like cracking up and then they have to put stuff on top of it, but they do it all spotty. It's
yeah, well,
except near the
it's all
college.
contracted. Yeah, it's all oh, they actually have it good by the college.
Yeah, well, like in the immediate vicinity of the college, it's well paved, and then and then everywhere else is, leaves something to be desired for sure.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, so that was a fun way to begin this. Um, so I'm Ryan, and the way this usually works is I'm just gonna record the whole conversation, and I'll transcribe it into text later to put onto the magazine, and uh, this one would come out October 1st. So we're like 2 months ahead. And then I'll also release the audio on the YouTube Issues YouTube channel, if that works for you.
Cool. Sure.
Okay, great. So let's get started with an easy one. What's your name?
John Bridges.
And where are you located?
I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Okay. And what is the name of your primary project?
I guess right now my primary project would be Street Clones. It's a punk band, kind of. Well, I say that it's old guy punk because when my friend Wes and I started, we purposefully wanted to do something that was, we purposefully wanted to do something that was simple
Yeah.
and kind of basic rock and roll, like in not necessarily in the style of, but in tribute to early rock and roll and uh, things like the Stooges, like simple rock music.
Sure. Um, well, that leads me to the next question, which is, what are some of your musical influences for this project?
Well, for Street Clones, we specifically said we wanted to pay tribute to Chuck Berry and to Motorhead.
Okay.
Um, Not that we really sound like either of those things, but also the Ramones, Little Richard, like those were things that we really talked about at the very beginning as being, and the Stooges, like I said,
Yeah.
sort of a pantheon of saints, almost like that influenced us philosophically and musically.
Yeah. By the way, you're going to be out in issues number 77, which I kind of thought was appropriate for your band because punk broke out in 1977 for the most part.
Right.
So let's go back a little further then. How did you become interested in this kind of music?
Um, I don't know. I mean, like when I first started getting into music as a kid, I listened to country music on the radio. Like when I was 5, I got a clock radio in 1988. I tuned it to a country station that I won't name that still exists,
Mm-hmm.
but doesn't play that sort of music anymore. I mean, they
Yeah.
say they play country, but they don't. Uh,
Right.
but
Uh-huh.
anyway, and then then I heard I heard my dad's Beatles records, and then that sort of changed things for me in terms of like my interest. Then I got into classic rock. Um, I had read about harder kinds of rock, like things not on, I was like a Black Sabbath fan and stuff and Deep Purple. I liked like 70s hard rock, but I didn't really, and maybe some heavy metal, but like I didn't listen to that much like really punk. And then I read a lot of music, a lot of books about music and a lot of things about music and bands, but a lot of stuff I'd never heard, like actually heard.
Mm.
This was pre YouTube, of course, and even like, like right before I couldn't download music at my house because we had a dial-up modem. So I went out on a limb one day. A guy was selling, a guy that worked at the local record store or had previously worked at CD Alley in Greenville. He was outside of a place called the Percolator Coffee Shop. He was selling records from a crate.
Cool.
And I bought a few things. I bought like the Beatles Rubber Soul. He had a copy of Miles Davis Kind of Blue, which I was already into.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, hell, I got to buy this like on vinyl. And he had Blue Cheer Vincimus Eruptum, which I had only read about and was like, oh, this is supposed to be like a big deal. And I'm so glad I bought that because that was also kind of like a game changer. Like I was into hippie music and like 60s psychedelic, San Francisco music, the
Right.
Grateful Dead, um, Quicksilver Messenger Service, things like that. But I hadn't really heard of Blue Cheer. I hadn't listened to Blue Cheer. I'd only heard of them. So actually hearing them, that was like huge. And then the other thing he had was the first Ramones album, and I bought that like just thinking like I feel like I should buy this. I feel like it's a big deal that it's even in this crate.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so I sort of bought it on a whim. I'd never listened to the Ramones, and um, I took all those things home and played them. When I put the Ramones album on the turntable, I cannot say that I was immediately smitten. Like I honestly was confused, frightened. Like it was so unlike. I mean, I was so like steeped in 70s rock, even though this is like the late 90s. I really just wasn't even like I wasn't really even listening to like alternative rock and stuff of the era particularly.
Right.
And so when I like hear the Ramones, I'm just like, oh my god, like this is kind of crazy. Like fast and sort of discordant and like so simple. I was like, is there something wrong with these guys? And it just it it was not love at first sight, but I was immediately intrigued, and I just kept playing it over and over until I was sort of, Stockholm syndrome sort of involved with them. Uh, and then and then I listened to it until I was like, I guess I like this now. Uh, and and then I didn't listen to that much punk and stuff for a long time, but really like till a number of years later. But Chuck Berry, man, I got into Chuck Berry because of my grandmother. Like my granddad had Johnny Cash albums, my grandma had some Chuck Berry albums, and I got their records from their garage when I was a fairly young teenager, and something about Chuck Berry just blew my mind. Like I knew like old rock and roll, I knew Johnny Be Good, and I was like, oh, that corny old song. But then like listening to like 36 tracks as opposed to like one over and over and over again, I was like, oh my God, this dude is like killing it.
Brilliant guitarist.
So yeah, I guess it's just the influences you accumulate over a lifetime, and you sort of figure out like how it all goes together. One big influence on Street Clones, not necessarily in style, but Keith Morris's band Off. That's how our band came to be, because Wes and I didn't know each other. A mutual friend was like, hey, you guys like should meet. Let's all go to this. Let's drive to Raleigh and see Off at King's, which we did. And we had a great time, but the whole time Wes and I just like were talking about music and bands and things we liked about what we enjoyed about bands, what we didn't like so much about bands, and how we were kind of bummed that there weren't bands in Wilmington that were making like, not that there weren't bands we liked, but that there weren't bands making music like we wanted to hear.
Yeah.
There wasn't a punk band for old guys making good rock, like good solid steady rock and roll music. Everybody's like on a particular angle.
Yeah.
So like seeing Off was like supercharging experience, and then just like having another long 2-hour conversation on the way back. Literally, like we exchanged numbers, and 2 weeks later we got together at my house and like wrote 2 songs, and we're like, well, I guess we have a band now.
Nice, very nice.
And I'm only the singer, so when I say we wrote songs, I mean he wrote the music and I wrote lyrics, and then we had to like find a band.
Okay, yeah, and I was going to ask you that. Okay, so when did you start performing as Street Clones?
Our first show was it was June. I think it was June 25th, and that was 8 years ago this year.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
Yeah,
do you find yourself writing about any subject matter in particular when you do your lyrics?
Well, so part of the reason that I even like began to want to write songs or be in a band was just like out of sheer frustration at daily life and frustrating exchanges, things that happen like where you feel powerless against the world, whether like individuals or systems, not even so much the government as just like sort of civilization at large.
Gotcha.
And so I don't write songs necessarily about big things. I like major issues, but I have written a lot of songs about things that annoy me.
I got you.
Which, when I think about it, is really rather petty. But we try to have I try not to be too. I am bitter, but I try not to be bitter in my songwriting. I try to be at least like a little bit clever and
Yeah.
try to make it funny. And I think that like I try to write about certain things in a way that maybe is at least relatable, so that um, you know, if somebody else hears the song, they're not like, "Damn, that dude sure does like complain a lot." Maybe they're like, "Oh my God, I know, like how annoying, right?"
Yeah, I got you. That makes sense.
I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, I think that effectively answers the question. Um, what about non-musical influences? Do you have any books or other forms of media which have influenced your thinking or art?
Yes, I'm sure. In terms of street clones,
Well, that's okay. Let's go there. Do you have any other projects you work on?
um, yes, I currently am involved with my friend Ryan Lewis in a experimental sound performance art thing called Dip Lip, which I guess you might be a little familiar with, but it's
Mm-hmm.
um, we've called it a lot of things over time. It's really been going on now for probably 6 years or more at different levels of intensity. It started as kind of a meme based joke, cultural joke. It's not really like picking on Southern people, or rednecks or hillbillies or whatever,
Right.
because we sort of are the people that it's about. But it's sort of a harsh noise and sound art with cultural plays. I don't know how else to describe it.
Okay,
We do
that's
weird things.
intriguing.
We do weird things, and it's about it's about smokeless tobacco and things having to do with uh, culture around pickup trucks and sunglasses.
Like the wraparound sunglasses.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like the
Um,
sunglasses you buy
it's
at a gas station.
Yeah, kind like the sunglasses that a state trooper wears,
Mm-hmm.
like the sunglasses that you buy at a gas station, like the sunglasses, like pretty much any kind of sunglasses will suffice. Like as long as you're protecting your eyes from the sun, uh, to the utmost extent, um, like best case scenario while on a boat,
Yeah.
then that's what
Well,
this is about.
that's the Wilmington flair. This is a boat.
Yeah, exactly. The boat. Yeah, you can't have the boat everywhere, but I mean, you could put in a John boat in a pond and be just as dip lip
That's true.
as a guy offshore, as long as long as you're dipping.
And so, where are you from? Where did you live as a kid?
Um, I'm from Eastern North Carolina. I was born in Washington, in Beaufort County, and I grew up in Greenville in Washington. And I left. I moved to Greenville when I was 7, and moved away when I was 18, and came to Wilmington. I went to college here and moved away. And my future wife and I moved to New Orleans, but we went there literally 5 days before Katrina,
Ooh.
and we didn't know Katrina was coming, so we had to leave. Uh,
Mm.
that's how I wound up back in North Carolina. We were outside of Charlotte for 8 years, and then that's how and then we moved back to Wilmington um, in 2013. But aside from 8 years in Western North Carolina, I've lived in Eastern North Carolina my whole life. So other than like a week in Louisiana, I
That's
would
really
say
interesting.
I'm definitely from here.
Yeah, that's nature definitely intervened on that one.
In a major way. We actually got affected by Katrina, and then also I forget the name now, but I think it might have been Rita. But the very next hurricane that came immediately after Katrina,
Yeah,
when
I don't remember
it
the next one. Katrina was such a
I
big deal.
can't remember. It was less of a big deal, but it hit Western Louisiana,
I see.
and it hit Lake Charles. It was basically coming for the town that we moved to, that we evacuated to.
Oh wow, jeez.
So we were like, we should probably just go.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's crazy.
but yeah, uh,
S- s-
nature crazy. So I still live by the ocean, in
Well,
the path of
yeah, that's
hurricanes.
true. That's true. Tell me about Mystery School Records. What's your involvement there?
Well, that is no longer really operating, other than, I guess, in my own mind.
Okay.
But that started in 2010. My friend John Bowman and I started the label to release our projects and things that were going on in like the Western North Carolina area. I lived in Shelby outside of Charlotte, so we were like, uh, my friend John and his brother Jordan, they had played in bands for a number of years and were involved in the Charlotte scene. And I came to be involved in music in the first place because of going to the Milestone in Charlotte in 2005 and meeting a bunch of people and going to see bands in Charlotte a lot. So I knew that there were bands in that area, like in between Asheville and, like China Grove, that
Hmm.
were just fantastic, that nobody ever heard, or at least that I thought were fantastic, that didn't get a big follow, that didn't have any following, maybe like bands from a little bit outside of Charlotte that didn't have any following where they were from. And maybe people didn't know them in Charlotte necessarily. um,
Yeah.
we started a highly philosophical conceit for a very like low budget, low brow record label, and the idea was to put out like, well, kind of whatever we wanted, but to focus on what we felt to be like inspired rock music that was not really being given a chance in any other way. Um,
Tell me about the
and
name.
Well, we took our logo includes the Mystery School Records name and a sort of stylized image of Socrates that was designed from a classic bust of Socrates by John's brother Jordan, who was also a really great drummer and a great visual artist. He designed that for us. And the whole idea of Socrates and Mystery School Records is we were trying to, John and I were both like into history and interested in philosophy
Yeah.
and the history of religion and wisdom and mysticism, and the calling your punk rock record label Mystery School Records is definitely a stretch. But
Hmm.
we're sort of referencing the ancient mysteries, the mystery schools of the ancient world,
Yeah.
um, and people being initiated through special rites and gaining sacred knowledge and wisdom. That was available if you were to seek it out, but was not easily available to the masses,
Gotcha.
which we were trying to promote things, although we didn't do a very strong job of promoting things. We didn't purposefully keep things a secret, but we were also only making 50 to 300 copies of any given release, um, and by the time you give them to by the time some bands get some, and then you send a few out for reviews, and then everybody keeps a couple copies, there's really not that many to put in the world. So our titles, we released almost 50 releases between CDs, tapes, and um, various sizes of vinyl in the 11 years that it was a thing. Um, and they're all in pretty limited release. I think they're enlightening.
Yeah.
It's not all punk rock. We did various types of rock, but also we had some electronic music, some ambient electronic by Subterrane. We put out 2 albums by Romanus Mott, which was um, Hickory, North Carolina based ambient electronics, sort of in the Berlin school, like Tangerine Dream,
Right.
and Asherah Temple, sort of like that was a
Nice.
bit more mystic. That was a bit more mystical for us than our typical punk rock fare. Um,
Cool.
but we just sort of tapped into a little bit of an underground that sort of was up and down the East Coast, mostly Southern punk rock bands, but it wasn't like that was the MO. That's just sort of people that we knew between artists and bands and people that toured together and people that we met. It was just sort of a little bit of a network that developed, and
Right.
you know how it goes.
Oh yeah.
The
Right.
underground, and all like 20 people that ever bought Mystery School Records releases seem to enjoy some of them.
Nice. Okay. Do you have anything you want to promote?
Right now, I don't have much going on. There's always something happening on the horizon with Dip Lip. We've never made a physical uh, release,
Hmm. Okay.
and so I think we'll be probably doing either a 5-inch lathe cut or a cassette tape. We've actually talked about doing a double live cassette, one with one of our early shows and one with our recent um, Wilmington dip spit competition that we had at Reggie's 42nd Street Tavern. It was won by our friend Carl Kruger, who has never used tobacco in any form in his life. He stepped up to the challenge and won the dip spitting competition, and got pretty sick as well.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's a worthwhile tribute to Carl to release his moment of triumph. Even though you can't see him, you can hear him spitting. It's all captured really well on the cassette. On the recording.
Nice.
Street Clones are going to be recording a few tracks, hopefully a few tracks a month for the next 2 or 3 months, with the goal of putting out a release. We haven't done. It's been about 4 years now, maybe, or 5 since we put out a CD. I don't know. Time's gotten weird, especially post COVID. I don't really know what year anything happened.
Right. That makes sense.
Um, but it's been a while since we put out our last album, Strange but True, and so I want to do something. We actually have progressed this in our music a little bit. We're ripping off a whole new array of bands now than we were previously.
Hmm.
I guess that's something. I maybe I should mention is the philosophy of Street Clones, which is kind of more important than the influences. Our philosophy and the name specifically, the name we sort of took from a friend of Wes's. He said they were hanging around downtown one night and like a bunch of people had poured out of this club, the Soapbox, and he said it's just people milling around. But kind of, like you could tell, oh, all those people came from a show, because they all are like dressed like they came from a show. Um, and his friend just said, "Oh man, look at all those street clones over there." Or he said his friend was really drunk, and he was like, "What?" And he said, "Like, look at all those street clones just walking all around over there. Just look at them, look at clones walking all around." And so Wes had just sort of carried that around with him for a while. And when we were trying to name the band, he's like, hey, what about this? And I was like, and he sort of explained it to me. Our concept with naming ourselves after something that his friend said with derision
Yeah.
is that basically, and we have a song about our name as well. But the gist of it is essentially that just like we're ripping off our favorite things and our influences, while we are trying to like make it good and distill it down to something that we think is like worthwhile, we're really just copying and ripping something off. Everybody is a little bit of a less good clone of the thing that they want to be, often, not always. And the way I think about it is everybody's just trying to be something they saw in a magazine sometimes. So like it's not none of it matters as much as people think it does, especially when it comes to being in like a rock band. Rock and roll dudes are way too serious about being cool and being seen a particular way.
Yeah.
And street clones, we're not really about seeming. We don't dress well, and we don't look very pretty.
Got you.
Which I think is also part of rock and roll. But anyway, street clones. We are street clones. The audience are street clones. People that have never heard us are street clones. So we're not. Even though we might comment on some stuff, we're not putting ourselves above it. Everything sucks and everybody sucks, and art is dumb. So you just have to embrace. You have to embrace all of that and just do it anyway.
Well, I think that's an excellent way to wrap it up.
There you go.
So thank you for agreeing to this interview.
Thank you, Ryan. I hope it was interesting.
It was, and I think other people will enjoy listening and reading it too. We should hang out sometime when I'm back down in Wilmington.
Yeah, definitely. Let me know when you're coming through, and at the very least, I'll try to catch you if you're performing.
Hell yeah. And also, if you could share like pictures of you performing with me so I could use some in the article, it'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I'll find some for you and provide some photo credits.
And if there's any websites you'd like me to highlight or create headlines of, I'm happy to do that too.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll try to find something because my Instagram is all just like pictures of flowers.
Yeah, I noticed that, which I'm really into, by the way. I'm super into like growing things as well.
Yeah, I just I kind of I reached a point with the label where I was like, this is financially draining, but also just like kind of a chore. And so I stopped it, but I still try to be in contact with all of the same people. Of course, once you're not providing a service that is helpful to people, or that people think they can take advantage of, it's easier for them to like lose your number. But
yeah, it's interesting how that works, isn't it?
It's fun to see who sticks around.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You can put that in the interview.
Oh, that's going in for sure.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, you will have a great night and enjoy.
Thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate it.
And enjoy continuing to work with your plants, as I will. And
oh yes. Sorry to hear about your tomato. That's
no, that's Let's not go into that. But yeah, that got me mad.
I hope you get some resolution.
I'm looking for justice. But
I hope.
I at least want to know who did it. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I don't get arrested, but I mean,
no.
Justice has there's justice, and then there's justice, and this requires both.
This requires both, and you know what? I would like. if I'm going to forgive them, I need someone to forgive. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
yeah,
I can't forgive you if I don't know you did it.
exactly. All right, all right. Have a good night, man.
Yeah, man.
Bye.